Hello, my name is Christopher Dring.
I'm James Batchelor.
And you are listening to Rare Replayed.
Press A! Hooray! It's time for Rare Replayed!
James, we haven't done a silly intro to Rare Replayed for a while now. That was pretty. That's a standard intro
That's
music.
That's the standard intro, and we did it last week as well. I don't know what you want to say. I don't know what we can do about it.
Can we do something silly, something completely ridiculous?
Well, like what?
I don't know. Anything? Any ideas?
There is this. This sounds rather stupid.
It's party time!
Viva Pinata, filled with fun.
Filled with fun!
Don't be enjoying them. Viva Pinata, filled with fun.
Filled with fun!
Viva Pinata, don't be enjoying them.
Welcome to picturesque Piñata Island. In its many gardens, all manner of piñatas live, dance, and dream that one day they will be chosen to entertain at a party as only piñatas can. Well, most piñatas, that is.
Oh, fudge! Shake it, shake it, shake it like a party animal. Break it, break it, break it like a party animal. Shake it, shake it, shake it like a party animal. Break it, break it, break it, break it, break it, break it, break it. Viva Pinata, filled with fun.
Filled with fun!
Viva Pinata, don't be enjoying them. Viva Pinata, filled with fun.
Right, yes, that is beautiful. That was absolutely beautiful. If you can't work it out by that, this week's Rare Replayed is about Viva Pinata. And James, you've had I do not know how you could possibly do it, but you spent a week trying to play Viva Pinata to the point where you can talk about it extensively. So you've been racing through it.
Yeah.
It's not a game you can race through.
No, I've noticed this. Because I never played it back in the day. This is the first time I've played Viva Pinata, and I've got up to the point where I'm level 11. I've got my first garden upgrade, and I got to that point. I thought, right, that's it. I'll stop. Now I've put about 5-6 hours into it by this point. I'm pretty sure. There doesn't seem to be a specific stat telling me how long, but I've got lots of different animals. I've got like about 10 different piñatas in my garden, and yeah, you're right. You can't race through it because I was sitting there like I've obviously under pressure. Like I knew we were having our guest on, so I thought I need to play as much of this as possible. And you can't race through it because the bloody animals, like, they don't listen. Like, honestly, like the worms.
The piñatas.
The piñatas, like the worm piñatas, they're easy because you can just get them to mate. And I had like a garden full of worms at one point. But in terms of like getting animals to stay or getting animals, I even had animals that met their romance requirements, and I kept directing them to each other, and they just wouldn't dance. And it's just really weird. You can't rush through it. I feel bad because what little I've seen of the game, and I increasingly realise that I've not seen anywhere near as much of the game as I should have. But what I've seen of the game, I've enjoyed. But I kind of wish I could just relax and play. But I don't have the time to.
No, it is a game. I love the fact that if you ever play, I interviewed somebody from Rare Replay back when they were on the promo tour for Rare Replay, and there's a guy called Adam Park, and he said in an interview with me that the game has about 600 hours or 700 hours worth of gameplay, and I thought that's just Viva Pinata. I don't know what you're talking about. It's a resource management game. It's a really intense resource management game, and it's done very simply, and it makes you feel like you can race through it. But if you do, you'll get into the trouble that I think you've got into. It is a beautifully sedate game. It's a wonderfully relaxing title. It was on PC as well, and it feels that the game might be. I think there's two platforms this game is best suited to: PC and mobile.
Yeah, I
Perhaps
definitely
console
felt like I needed a mouse. I needed a mouse control.
But you know, it's the depth to the game, and it's like you think it's just a game where you plant some seeds and you get some mate. There is so much stuff to it, and you know, having multiple gardens is the real solution to it. You almost need a wiki open.
Even the tutorial section, like honestly, I played through the tutorial section. I thought, oh, okay, this game seems quite simple. That's fine. And then they go, okay, off you go, build your garden. And I'm like, yeah, but now what? Because there's so much. Like, and then you're interested. Like, you know, people keep on turning up. And saying, oh, by the way, I give you seeds. I run a shop. I'm a doctor. I build houses. And they're like, yeah, like every time you go to the shop, she's got like another bloody million menus of stuff she's going to sell, like fertilizer and seeds. And it's like, oh my god, there is so much stuff here. I am not going to be able to like rush through this. So I stopped.
It is one of the. I will say this about this game. this is the greatest game Rare has made on an Xbox platform. The Viva Pinata series. It's actually one of the best Rare games ever made.
That is a brave claim.
And you know, it's obviously there are ones that we look at as icons of Rare, like GoldenEye and like Banjo-Kazooie, and in my mind, Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Obviously.
But Viva Pinata is so, you know, I love this was amazing afterwards. The first Viva Pinata came out, and there was a lot of interviews. Oh, we missed those are features that we wanted to get in the game, we couldn't get in. Like, really? It's like this game felt so complete, and how beautiful it looked. Now,
it's a gorgeous game.
I'm not sure about the Mexican theme. I know that to me it's sort of English country garden mixed with Mexico, which is two different worlds. It works, but I'm not quite sure how. It was there's a lot of the flour symbols that that had a sort of they could either been tortilla chips or bits of flowers. It was all sort of it was a very lots of triangles in that game. But it still looks beautiful now. I mean, the game came out in 2006. It's almost 10 years old. And if you plug it in, if you've got Rare Replay and you play it, you just look how beautiful it looks. I would actually say, if you've got Rare Replay, don't play it. Because, this is my criticism of Rare Replay, a potential slight criticism of Rare Replay, is Viva Pinata Trouble in Paradise is effectively the same game, but bigger with more stuff in it.
Okay.
It is one of those games where I'm like, if you're going to play Viva Pinata, just play Viva Pinata 2. Don't bother. I mean, unless you want to play it on the DS and you have it on the go or whatever. Just play the second one. I don't know why. There's no need to play both because they're so, James, if you are going to go back to it, if you're going to find yourself peaceful over Christmas, putting your feet up in front of a fire with chestnuts roasting and all this kind of stuff, and you think,
do I live in a Christmas card or something? What is going on?
Rare Christmas card.
Rare Christmas card. Yes.
Yeah, you lived in a rare Christmas card, and put in Trouble in Paradise. I would. And although if it is on the go, you get the DS version stands up, I think. But you know, wonderful game.
Yeah.
Shall we get our guest on?
I think we should. We're going to have a little musical interlude as usual because the music is utterly beautiful.
Oh, yeah, we didn't mention that. It's great. The music's wonderful.
It's just gorgeous.
We'll chat to our guest about it.
We should.
Yeah.
Let's have some music and then let's chat to the guest.
Okay.
We're joined this week by Ryan Stevenson. Ryan, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do at Rare, and what you did on Viva Pinata.
Okay, so I'm Ryan Stevenson. I worked at Rare for about 15 years now. I started on the Game Boy team way back when, and so I did It's Mr. Pants. And yeah, that's a funny game. And then I moved on to kind of like Banjo, Grunty's Revenge, and after the sterling work of drawing It's Mr. Panther, a badly drawn character, nicely drawn, I ended up moved on to the Viva Pinata team, which was actually a tiny group of people within the Ghoulies team while they were finishing that, and that's what how I started my career as a concept artist, drawing funny animals. And then after that, I obviously worked on Banjo Nuts and Bolts. Worked on the sports games, and I'm now art director on Sea of Thieves.
Oh wow!
Nice. We might have to
Yeah.
pick your brain about that later.
Well, no, they're not allowed.
We're not allowed.
No, Craig said.
No, Sea of
Worth a
Thieves.
try, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, we will. I can't wait to hear more about that game. But we're not talking about that game.
We're not. We're talking about Viva Pinata. So, I mean, I guess the fairly obvious first question is, where on earth did that idea come from?
It was an odd game. So the initial idea, I think it was Tim's idea about a game about just these looking at animals that you find within your garden. So he'd seen an animal in his garden, and he'd worked out why it was there and kind of like how to encourage more of them. And that was the inception. There's like a few pages document, and it was a group of us that were like there was. Myself, Justin Cook, Will Bryan, and Ed Bryan, who was kind of like dipping into it now and again, who was just finishing off Grabbed by the Ghoulies, started working on this strange little game that was going to be on a little handheld device. So it was like a pocket PC. So it was a smartphone before smartphones kind of thing. And the idea was that as a group of people, you'd have different seeds and things like that. Each gamer would have those, and then be able to kind of trade with each other. So I may have squirrels and you may have an acorn tree. So I'd get my acorns from you and we'd swap them around. And that was the core of the idea. And I was tasked with trying to make kind of build a world, because I really like building worlds and building characters. So I'm kind of it's one of my favorite things to do. And I had to kind of unify these characters in one. So there's lots of different approaches. There was the idea that it could be like a cuddly kind of toy, or a Beanie Baby style thing. But then the idea kind of just stuck, that it needed something that would unify them all together. There can't just be a bunch of cartoon characters, because we're quite known for doing kind of cartoon things at Rare, and we could have just put big goggly eyes on lots of characters, and that'd work. But we wanted it to be kind of more than that. So I got this. I was quite into Mexican culture at the time, and I kind of traced this all back, because the amount of times people have asked me, and I've always been a bit unsure where it came from. And then I had kind of like an epiphany moment where I realized I was in a restaurant, a Mexican restaurant in New York. So I'm from the Midlands, which is not far from the studio. So I'm in a very kind of like rural, kind of not very cosmopolitan place. And I was in New York, and in this Mexican restaurant, so this different culture in a different culture in a different culture. And there was piñatas hanging up on the kind of wall, and it's something that kind of stuck with me. And I think it just sat in my head as a bit of a seed of a nice design. And in the UK at the time, there wasn't really many piñatas about. They weren't being sold in shops. And I just kind of thought, this is brilliant. So when trying to find something that would unify it, I came to the conclusion that we could use this piñata style that would unify all the animals. So a horse would be the same thing as a rhino. It's the same thing as a piñata is, and a lizard and an insect. They're all the same thing. They're all piñatas. And that's how they all unified, and that was the start of it. And right at the start, they didn't smash open. They didn't do any of that. You didn't hit them. It was they didn't crack open or anything. They were just this design that would unify them, and then that slowly seeped into the design as well.
It's a beautiful. I mean, it's a beautiful looking game, and we were actually saying before the show how we thought that the Piñata style was interesting, because Rare are quite historically quite British in its inspiration. You could feel it in everything. Whereas this game, it didn't. I mean, I still had Rare's style and flair to it, but it didn't feel particularly British, because obviously it felt a little bit more Mexican. Because I was saying this to you, James, that I hadn't actually. Piñatas are not something that's ever been in my head before. I mean, I knew what they were from American TV shows, to the point where after your game came out, I would wander around the shops and I'd see a piñata hanging up, and I'd think, oh, there's some merchandise of Viva Pinata.
Yes.
It's one of those weird kind of Americanisms that's just kind of come over here, because I've actually been to like a couple of parties like in the last couple of years where people have made a piñata, but it's like, why? Well, we don't have piñatas here. It's odd, and it's odd when you're playing it, because there's still quite a British touch to it.
Oh yeah.
In terms of, because it's very much a Rare game. Like the voices of the different characters, particularly Leafos with a West Country. You're a great gardener, you are. It's like, it's just really weird. Like, she's wearing this Mexican mask. Well, yes. Like, I'm not going to do like horrifically racist impression of a Mexican person, but then I would have expected them all to sound like that. I mean, did you find like blending the two styles, keeping it British, but also playing to this Mexican theme that you had, was that difficult?
Not really. Funnily enough, the game was actually very British at one point, where there's obviously for Leafos, I did tons of designs, and right at the start she was just a gardener. So there was an old guy with a white beard and a big woolly jumper at one point, and it was like working your allotment. So it was very British, and then as the piñatas came in, it all kind of changed. I don't think it was that difficult, because we were all. It was just such a group of us working together on it that was so quintessentially like Rare and British, that it just naturally happened, and this other flavour just kind of fed into it and just kind of seeped through it all.
You don't get much more British than a garden simulator.
No.
I can't think of anything more British.
It's weird as well. Like, I honestly, like the music, like Grant Kirkhope's score for it, I honestly expected it to start going to "What do you get in an English country garden?" Missed opportunity though. You should have brought back Farmer Fiddlesticks from Ghoulies. It'd have been great. Punch my pinatas.
I mean, it was very colourful. I mean, rare games are, but they've always had a sort of almost a boy cartoon, Saturday morning cartoon feel to it. They've always been a bit cheeky. Where Viva Pinata was very lovely. You know, it was something that I quite happily play with my fiance, or if you show my little my little girl. And if I had a little girl, I don't have a little girl. If I had a daughter, I'd play the game, and she could she goes, "That really where babies come from?" No, not having that conversation. No, it was. I did feel that. Was it? Did you deliberately try and make it? Because the thing is, Xbox at the time was very much a shooter console, and I believe they were pitching this as their big opportunity to expand out. Was that something that was in your mind when you were making it?
Not really. I think I have a tendency to use quite saturated colours in my work, so kind of any excuse to push it, I always embrace. And at the time as well, just from looking as an artist, looking at the swathes of games that were out there, there was lots of brown and greys, and I've always felt that I understand why that happens and what the thoughts are behind it. But I always find it a little bit disappointing that there's not more colour in the world and not more experimentation with gaming.
Because this was 360 era, so this was right in the middle of gaming's great brown/grey era.
Yeah,
everything
very
was
much
brown.
So. It's always been important that it wanted to stand out and be its own thing. So I know it wasn't necessarily for everyone, but I think how you said it's something you could play with your daughter or something you play with your fiance. That seemed to be a bit of the magic of it, is playing it with other people that wouldn't necessarily be thought of as that kind of gamer.
It definitely felt very family orientated, even more so than the rest of Rare's games. I remember, I'd not played it until we started playing it for Rare Replayed, and going through the tutorial, and it really felt kind of, Chris mentioned, many of your characters feel very kind of Saturday morning cartoon. This felt like CBBC first thing in the morning sort of thing. Yeah. This felt very in the night garden. Like just the way that that everything's explained to you in a nice kind of calm way, and you're eased into the experience. You've got the lovely swaying string based music, and it was just it feels like something that wouldn't look out of place on CBBC or a really like young channel. Was that what you were aiming for, or?
No, it wasn't really. I think it was just trying to do something different that wasn't out there, and also it seemed to make sense to lighten some of the themes within it, because I think it helped by doing that and making that kind of have that softer kind of feel in that sense. The fact that your animals mated and ate each other and would fight and do those things, I think it helped. If it'd been probably a little bit more kind of realistic or gritty, seeing two cats ripping a poor bunny comb apart or doing a romance dance may have felt very, very wrong.
Oh, the romance dance. We should probably talk about that.
Yeah.
I spent basically the first hour or so of just making worms mate, and just the weirdness of it all. Like, okay, right, you've now got two worms. Make them romance each other, and they'll do a romance dance. Like, is that what we're calling it? And I thought it was okay. That's quite sweet. That's quite funny. But the fact that they go into the house, and then there's like this 70s cool, almost porn-like groove as the worms dance around each other. I'm like, what on earth is going on here?
Yeah, of all the romance dances to start with, that music is the most comedy. I just wanted to have that kind of fun with it. It really was. It was done in the most innocent of ways. That you were summoning these eggs by doing this dance. You would summon Storkos and get these eggs. So but I don't think you can ever handle a subject like that and not feel slightly strange.
There was were you ever involved in any of the TV side of things? Because there was a TV series that went alongside this. Yeah. I missed it back in the day, but were you involved in that?
Yes, yeah, it was. I can remember going to E3, I think it was one of the years way back when, before it came out, and we actually met with all the TV people and we had this big chat. And we'd get the scripts and we'd read through the scripts and it was kind of like it was quite a fun thing because we were able to see things within the TV show that wasn't necessarily in the game at that time as well, like the whole kind of polar bear region aspect of it. They said they wanted to do something that went into the kind of the wilderness, of the cold wilderness. So I ended up drawing some pictures of what a snow level would look like, because we also had the snow idea of the polar bear at the time. We'd drawn up these other piñatas, and that was seeded into the TV show as well.
As we said, thanks to the glory of YouTube, I have actually managed to watch an episode and a bit, and it's actually it's quite entertaining. It was kind of a guilty pleasure yesterday. I was watching Viva Pinata episodes on my lunch break.
It was an odd thing because it was done from a different point of view, but we thought that was quite nice because it kind of took it away from the game in another way. It gave it its own space where obviously the piñatas in there are talking to each other and experience it. There was one idea at one point that you'd actually see it from a point of view of like Lifos, because she's in the credit sequence. You go over the garden and you actually see her. That you'd actually see these human characters looking at the piñatas, and that maybe they'd be talking to each other like the animal sounds, but in fact they're actually talking to each other properly. So I thought that would have been an interesting thing to do, but we never did.
It's on DVD, James. I'm sure I can get it if you. That's your Christmas present sorted.
Amazon calls.
I actually couldn't, but you think about it. You started off as a sort of effectively a 3-man team within another team making a mobile game, and suddenly it's being billed as the great mainstream hope of Microsoft and Xbox. They've got a TV show about it. There was sequels, 3 sequels, sort of, or 3 further games afterwards. I mean, was there for a moment you thought, how's this ballooned?
No, I think we're all really fairly level-headed about it. Thinking back to it, it really was quite mental at the time that we were sitting there kind of making this game. We normally we're a bunch of kind of just normal people making a game, and then all of a sudden there's a TV show, and that's quite exciting. Okay, we'll just fold that in, and then there was like some merchandising stuff as well that you can still probably find. There's like party things like party hats and paraphernalia. And that came, and then there was a book. There was also a sticker book, and then there was Burger King toys, and you just kind of like slowly just kind of balloons around you, and you go, oh, okay then, and we just kind of took it in our stride. It was one of those things.
Wasn't there a London Zoo event? Was that the first game or the second one?
I think we did. There was lots of events. There was like a dancing thing where they did a massive piñata as well that you could probably find a picture of a massive pistachio. There was lots of, and you just think back at it and went, this is insane. This is just crazy. But yeah, it was just a small game that we wanted to make ourselves, and then this grew around it. But yeah, it was a great experience.
It's interesting that the game started as a mobile title because, like I say, having not played it back in the day, sitting down to play it and coming into the world of the Viva Pinata for the first time, it has a lot in common with the kind of the free-to-play world-building games that you have on mobile and tablets. And it was really odd, but a welcome change to not be asked if I want to pay X amount of Smurfberries to speed up the house, or like it's weird. Like it felt like something that I could play on my phone or my mobile or my iPad. That would work, and if you guys ever brought Viva Pinata back, that's the form I assume it would take. And it was. Have there been discussions about that? Yes, since.
No, there's been nothing really kind of. But obviously, whenever we talk about doing a new game or something, we always look at things that we could do. But there's nothing really concrete on that.
I think it would work. I mean, obviously, I'm not giving you ideas. I think it would be quite lovely. It was one of those games that I always felt it did all right. I think, but I always felt it deserved to do better. I think it deserved to be one of my all-time favourite Xbox 360 games is Viva Pinata. It just helps send me to. I can almost fall asleep to the soundtrack.
Definitely.
It is a beautiful soundtrack. I must admit, I put it on at the weekend, and obviously the music all came in, and I thought, oh, Grant, you did a good job on this. It was really good.
We interviewed Grant last week, and he said that it was his favourite soundtrack was his Viva Pinata work. So, yeah,
it's a very beautiful piece, and like there's some nice touches there. To go back to the mobile thing again, like you said, Chris, like it definitely feels like it would work. I feel like I would like to be able to, because the issue is like trying to play this before the show. I've been quite limited on gaming time at the moment, so I feel like I'm not being able to give Viva Pinata the time it deserved. But if I was able to continue my garden on my phone and my iPad as I'm like travelling to work or something, I just think in a post-Farmville world, it's the sort of thing that would go down really well.
Yeah, it's 2006 though. The iPhone hadn't come out yet.
Exactly.
There is a portable Viva Pinata. We should get you DS. We should get the DS version.
Yeah, the DS.
I'll have to find that. I'll have to track that down.
And they did manage to cram a lot of the experience into that. That was one of those things that the main team was just working on Viva Pinata and the Game Boy, or the DS team at the time. They were working on a variety of things, and they're kind of like, well, we'll work on a Viva Pinata title, and we just kind of forgot about it and just supplied them with all the assets and obviously all the game documentation. They just kind of turned around and went, oh look, we've made your big game in this little thing. It's quite impressive. Like, oh wow, that's really good.
It's surprising how much depth there is to the game. I don't know what I expected when I went into it, but like I said, because there's this very family feel and it feels like it's accessible to children, I thought, okay, this is going to be reasonably easy to get into. And no, I tell you what, it wasn't long before my garden spiraled into anarchy of ill or dead pinatas and. Fights breaking out everywhere, and then just trails of sweets left where pinatas had exploded. It's like, what on earth am I meant to be doing?
It's devastating as well for me, because at the beginning, when I first played it, I named them after people. I named the pinatas after my friends, and then they all started getting eaten. And I was so devastated. Don't get attached. If people haven't played this, listening in, if people haven't played the game before and you're thinking of giving it a go, don't get attached to your pinatas.
Particularly to the worms, because I found that obviously the worms are the easiest ones to get to mate, breed, do the romance dance. But romance, sorry, they're the easiest ones to romance. But loads of the other, quite a few of the other pinatas that I've come across, they need to eat a worm in order to romance them. So it's like basically you're just breeding food for the rest of the garden.
Yeah, they are quite a lot of fodder. It does feel a bit bad when it's the first thing you name, and then it can easily get killed or eaten by experiment very early on.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Did you have a lot of fun naming them, because they're all named after sweets, aren't they?
Yeah, the team there was this big document of kind of like naming all the different animals, kind of trying to come up with all these different fun names for all these animals that like obviously based on sweets or based on like what's the wolf one? There was a marshmallow wolf one. I can't remember his name, Wolf Mallow or something. But yeah, so lots of different sweet names. So yeah, it was a very much kind of like a fun team-based thing where everyone was just writing down lots of different combinations of names for them.
Every time a new pinata appears, I'm like, oh, very clever. The sour sherbet. That's brilliant.
Mallow Wolf.
Yeah, Mallow Wolf, that's it. There you go.
Are you subtly Googling while we're recording?
They
are brilliant. Like the badgesicle, the fudge hog, the syrupant. Like they're. I can just picture like you guys just in a big room going, oh, what about this one?
Yeah.
I don't know who came up with them all. I know Justin. I think Justin did a lot of them. It was one of the, because you were saying about the complexity of it. One of my favourite things that really early on was Justin Cook, the designer, just sitting in a room with this massive whiteboard in front of him with this animal chain of life, and it was just the most complicated kind of like thing. It just grew out from the worm, and it just looked just such like brain meltingly complex, and that all went into the game. That's the whole kind of food chain of the animals, and it was crazy.
Well, I love the simplicity and the complexity of it. It actually, and we said this a lot, it reminded me of a Nintendo game. When Nintendo make an RPG, they don't make Final Fantasy, they make Pokemon, which has more depth than Final Fantasy, but it doesn't feel that way, and you can actually ignore it. And the thing with Viva Pinata is it seems so simplistic, so beautifully simple, and yet it's actually a really dense and complicated resource management game. It's up there with some of the biggest, the most complicated ones you could get. But Pikmin is one of my favourite examples of a really quite deep real-time strategy game. But it doesn't feel like one because it's been dressed up and it's been communicated, I guess, in a very accessible manner, and I think that's how I viewed Viva Pinata. It got me into a genre of game that I would never have been interested in just seeing it in a PC. It was quite lovely in that way.
The complexity, I like I suppose for me within games, I do like when there's a simple action that you can do and you can use it in a variety of ways. For instance, the I don't know if you know that you can the Syrupent to get the kind of the two-headed version and the Hydra. If as the egg's about to kind of crack open, if you tap the egg with a shovel, it kind of cracks open and gives you these different versions of the animal. So it's a simple action of just the way that you use the shovel, but you're using it in different ways to make these different things occur. I think that's the beauty of it. Rather than saying there's a new thing to do or there's a new combination of button presses or anything like that, you're using an action that you're familiar with.
I didn't know that. It's weird because it's both a really relaxing game and quite a frantic one as well, because you can't really pause what's happening. If there's a fight happening and you're trying to build a house and there's seeds growing or seeds dying even, and you can't pause, you can't zoom out as much. Like I was begging for a top-down view. So when you're like even when you're kind of zoomed out as much as the camera will go, when you're frantically scrolling around the garden trying to find that other sparrowmint to get it to romance the other sparrowmint, I just couldn't find what was going on. It's weird. It's like it's both relaxing and stressful. It's a very odd mix.
The music as well. It's all kind of like nicely chilled, and then there's a fight kicking off, and you go, "Where's the fight? What's going on?"
I think that's
searching with God.
It's just gardening in general. Now, I read that you guys were. I mean, it's amazing in retrospect considering how well received it was. But there were a lot of things that you couldn't get into the game that you wanted to get into the game, which is the reason why there was a sequel. Were you a bit disappointed then, as development approached? It looked like you weren't going to get everything in.
I think it happens with all games, really. You kind of like dream huge, and then you kind of bring it down to the realities of actually making a game. Otherwise, you'd never finish one. But yeah, I think we got the majority of the stuff got in it. I think that we had a lot of features that you probably could have done more with. There was a lot of things in there that we could have had for a game with so much depth. I think we could have added even more depth. There was really early on. There was the whole idea of having animals that inherited characteristics from each other, which was quite a fun thing to try. We kind of ended up not doing it really early on because of other problems. Like one of the things was the size of the animal, the baby that got produced from the romance dance, inherited some of the size of the parents, and we got it in this kind of weird way where you could actually keep breeding them to make them smaller and smaller. So we had an elephant smaller than a blade of grass going around your garden, this teeny weeny elephant, and that was just a weird buggy thing at the start, and I kind of feel like that would have been nice to have had a little bit of characteristics inherited from each other.
That sounds quite intense. It was a delightful game. I'm interested in how you felt as well at the time when the game came out, because Rare at that stage there were some. Because I think at that stage it's been a little while since you left Nintendo. They've been grabbed by the Ghoulies, Perfect Dark Zero. They've been Kameo Elements of Power, and I loved all those games, but they perhaps weren't as they were critically mixed reviews. Some of them got better reviews than others, but Viva Pinata was universally praised. I mean, even now it's got a wonderful cult following to it. Was that how did that feel when it came out, and that was the response?
Amazing, really. I think it still is today. I think because I think for the project, out of all the projects I've ever worked on, Viva Pinata did seem like it was very personal to us for some strange reason. It just seemed to resonate, like Grant, obviously with the music. I know that there's the story of him kind of like when the orchestra would finish, he kind of like went up to thank them at the end and kind of started to cry because it was such an emotional thing to do. And I've always thought that the Pinatas because I spent so much time drawing them all and designing them all, they do feel. I always joke that they're my first children. I have got kids now, so they don't feel left out. They kind of they do feel very personal. I know that Neil Price did a lot of. He kind of designed a lot of the early kind of feel of the animation around the characters, and that seemed like it was a project where everyone just seemed to like blossom into their roles. So when it kind of went out into the world and people love it and they still talk about it today, like you'll have, obviously I'm doing this now, people have still fond memories of it. It feels like it was all worthwhile. It was a good experience because of it as well. I think if it came out and it was universally hated, I think we'd have all been really crushed, more so than normal. But no, since it's got that kind of following, I think that speaks to the project itself, that it was a kind of a labour of love for us.
So out of all of the Pinatas then, your first children, did you have any favourites? Were you any that you were particularly proud of?
It changes all the time. I get asked this question quite a lot. The Fudgehog is always a good one, just because we had so much fun with his movement, because he had that big tall back. So he kind of like became a little bit of a favourite the way he moved. But I must say that I quite really like the Hootie Fruity. Again, because the movement, because you can spin the head fully round. I thought that was quite good fun. But yeah, so at one point we had these Piñata cards made for Viva Pinata 2, where each of the team members, when you had the vision cards where you could hold it up and get a Piñata with those clothing on in the game, and everyone picked the Piñata that they wanted, and I picked the Hootie Fruity, and I made him look like kind of like an inspector with his little moustache and his little bowler hat. And I thought that was the funniest thing ever. And there's also the wallpaper of it looking like chocolate orange, which is chocolate orange. Clockwork Orange, the film, which I don't know if you can find that. That's quite. It looks quite dark there. It looks quite a moody owl. I thought that was good.
When we put this up on YouTube, I will locate that. Yeah. Well, I don't really have any more questions. I mean, listening to you talk about how much you loved the game, how personal it was, might explain one. I overanalyze things sometimes. I watch the intro music to Rare Replay. And halfway, the thing that comes out the middle, so if all the characters appear around the side, the thing that pops out the middle is a Piñata. And I thought, they've selected the Piñata to be the banjo. That was the thing. So I think perhaps I get why it was clearly an important project for you.
Yeah, I don't know if they obviously those guys kind of like were squirreled away in the barn, kind of making Rare Replay at this lightning speed. It was really impressive. I was really surprised myself, but obviously I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want them to change it, so I didn't call it out.
Yeah.
Just
in case it was a mistake.
Oh yeah, leave him in. So that was. It is funny that when we do stuff, they often kind of pop up on our websites, obviously, and promo materials when we do it. It's just, I think there's just a charm to them that still is there today. I think if you took a Piñata character and tried to up-res it for today, I think ultimately it would look very similar to what it does now. It would just have more polys and the shaders would be a little bit better, but it wouldn't have a drastic redesign or anything like that.
I'm looking forward to a Viva Pinata minigame in Sea of Thieves.
Speaking of which, can you tell us anything?
No.
I can't. I'd love to. Looking forward to that day.
They won't let them come on, James, if you keep asking questions about Sea of Thieves.
It's fine. Okay, wonderful. Ryan, thank you so much for your time today. That's
no problem.
Okay.
Yeah, lovely. And I've got a garden to attend.
Yeah, or two. Yeah.
Try and make a garden for hippos. You need a lot of water.
So, Chris, what are we going to be talking about next time?
Well, they're green. They came out a while ago, but they're still pretty big. We've got Battletoads.
Nice. I was trying to come up with a joke answer. There wasn't one.
You could have gone with
Battletoads.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
could've
but it's
done.
too close to the truth.
It is.
We're
We're going with basically cartoon reptiles.
going to the unofficial Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game. Battletoads obviously is a great game, but I've never played it before.
No,
It's
me
before
neither.
my Rare time. It's still seen as one of the iconic Rare games, probably. Before Donkey Kong Country, it's the one that people associate that and Killer Instinct. They perhaps associate Rare with. I really can't wait to give it a go.
This, I think, is going to be one of the ones I'm most intrigued about because even before Rare Replay was even announced, people kept calling for a Battletoads return. So now I'm going to see why people want this franchise back.
There's Battletoads t-shirts just come out from Insert Coin, and there's the Battletoads vinyl that you can pick up. I mean, it is seen as one of their big ones. We've never experienced it, so I can't wait.
This is going to be interesting. Okay, so stay tuned for that. You can find all of our episodes at rareplayed.com. Regardless of how you're listening to this, you should know that we are available on iTunes, Pocket FM, Playercasts, Stitcher, and of course YouTube. And you can find us on Twitter at rareplayed. See you next time.
See you next time.